Well, good morning, everybody. It's 7 a.m. here in Sydney, so I'm hoping you've all managed to get up early and watch this webinar, and I apologise for the change of time from last week. We do have a very, very interesting speaker, one that will be a speaker that will really, I think, put a fire in your belly for protecting religious freedom. And I'll get to Joe Kennedy in just one moment. Just make sure that as you're watching the Zoom video and we're talking, there is an opportunity for you to ask any questions down the bottom by just sort of typing in if you do wish to do so. Otherwise, please feel free to email me at the end of the Zoom webinar, and I will certainly let Joe know about the questions that you've asked, and he can answer it to you personally. Well, Joe, welcome to Sydney, Australia, and Australia in particular. It's 7 a.m. here, and I believe it's about 2 p.m. in the afternoon for you, where you are. Now, we're going to talk to you for the next 45, 50 minutes, Joe, so welcome to Australia first.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to getting over there, but this will be the second best that we could do right now.
Okay. All right, for everybody else, I'm just going to quickly then the actual webinar. Of course, we're an organisation, Christian Voice Australia. We advocate from a biblical perspective, so most of my Australian audience will know that. And under this banner, we also have what's called the National Webinar Ministry, is what we're doing now. And we interview Christians of corporate, government, and of course, within the church itself. As usual, we have a supporter, which is EA Insurance, and they do a lot of services for churches and Christian organisations. So please make yourself aware of them as well. Joe, what I want to talk to you about very quickly is that you are a coach. I think at a major, I suppose we call it school, which we'll get to in a moment. But I've noticed that you've written a book called Average Joe, and we're going to talk about that as well. But what a great title, because we're all just average people. And when I started reading this, I was absolutely astounded by the content. So we'll look at that. Joe, I'm going to try and see if I can play a video, and then we'll go into our questions. So let's have a go at it, and let me see. If you can't hear it, Joe, just let me know.
Joe Kennedy, the praying high school football coach who recently won his Supreme Court case and was reinstated to his old job, has resigned from Bremerton High School effective immediately.
I feel like I'm kind of the outsider and still on, kind of like on enemy grounds, and I don't like that feeling.
He cited multiple reasons for his resignation, including taking care of an ailing family member out of state. He delivered his resignation to the district earlier today. Coach Kennedy said that, "I believe I can best continue to advocate for constitutional freedom and religious liberty by working from outside the school system, so that is what I'll do. As I've demonstrated, we must take a stand for what we believe in. In my case, I made a stand to take a knee. I encourage all Americans to make their own stand for freedom and our right to express our faith as well. I appreciate the people of Bremerton, the coaches, staff, and especially the students, and wish them all well. Bremerton will always be home." CBN News' David Brody interviewed Coach Kennedy in Bremerton, Washington just a few days ago. He told us that he felt like an outsider after returning, and things were not the same. During last Friday night's return, he spent long stretches of time by himself on the sidelines. He told CBN News the school district and this lawsuit took a lot of the joy out of coaching.
As much as they have accepted me, still I feel like I'm kind of the outsider and still on, kind of like on enemy grounds, and I don't like that feeling. Yeah. It doesn't have the same feeling that it did. The school district and this lawsuit took a lot of the joy out of coaching. It took away just about everything that meant something to me.
Okay. Joe, well, that's a bit of an introduction to yourself. Wow, I'm astounded. Let's just start off with who Joe Kennedy is. Where did you grow up, Joe? And just a bit about the background.
Yeah, so I grew up on the I like to call it the left coast of the United States, and up in Washington, the Pacific Northwest. I grew up in Bremerton, which is the hometown where I coached, and I was that troubled youth and unwanted kid, and I really wanted to just get out of Bremerton, Washington when I was growing up. So that's where I'm from. That's where my wife is from. We grew up together. She was my childhood sweetheart, and yeah, that's where it all started from.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Very quickly, I mean, did you play football in your days? Were you an all-star back or whatever they call them over there? What was your sporting background?
No, I was actually a wrestler. I was really tiny. I was 4'10" till my sophomore year in high school. So I was just a little guy. I was a little scrapper. So I used to just get in fights with the football players. I was best suited wrestling against the guys, and that was my sport.
Oh, wow. Well, wrestling is an Olympic sport, I'm told. So, now, look, I have to tell you, Joe, you might go mad at me, but I've got here my Seattle Seahawks cap.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a bit of a Seattle fan, but tell me how, from high school, is the next step pro football, do you know, for a lot of those students or whatever you want to call them? Is that where they go next after college football?
Yeah, so they go from usually they start out, playing peewees when they're in grade school, and then they start in middle school where they start stepping up to really start competing. Then I get them in high school. Then we prep them for college. Then they go on to the professional, where Seattle Seahawks and professional players will play.
Okay, so Joe, there you are. You've got a job at Bremerton High School. Is that correct? High school, yeah. And you are the coach of the varsity team, the football team. So tell me, does the coach have complete control over the players in terms of, or is it the managers or is it the president of the school? Who actually makes the decisions as to what the team can and can't do?
Well, usually I run it where the team captains have most of the say in what the team is going to do, as far as if they're going to pray, if they're not going to pray, how they're going to do the warm ups, all of those kind of things. I like to keep it down at the lower levels where they get to make the team decisions. I like to build the leadership in the teams themselves. So when it comes to the personal choices, that's where those come from. But the X's and O's, that comes from the coaching staff itself.
Okay, well, I'm going to get to the prayer in a moment. Joe, just tell me, you're a Christian. How did you become a Christian?
Well, interesting story. I used to be a heathen. I was a big time atheist when I was in the military. I was in the United States Marine Corps, and I retired from the military after 20 years. And I met up with my childhood sweetheart, who was she grew up in the church. She very much was in love with the Lord and prayed for my soul very many times, and she got me going to church. And next thing I knew, I was applying for high school coaching staff right after I found my faith. And so she had everything to do with it, and she was the one who led me to the Lord. And God, in return, wanted me to give the kids a place to turn and to find some kind of meaning in their lives, and also with myself. That was my calling, was to be able to coach kids and these young men into becoming better young men and the next leaders of the world
here. Okay, so you're a Christian, and I think I've read somewhere that you made a commitment to God that you would give thanks at the conclusion of each game. Where did that come from, Joe? What drove you to that? I might probably God speaking to you, but you tell us, what made you decide to do that?
Right. So when I originally made my commitment to God, I was making a deal with him that if he saved my marriage, it was, God, if you give me my wife, I'll give you my life. And so he got me into the whole coaching, into the applying for the job. And I told him, this was a couple years later when they offered me the job in coaching. And I said, give me the weekend to think about it. After they offered me the job on a Friday, I went home over the weekend and I was watching the television. And in the middle of the night, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Facing the Giants, but the Kendrick brothers were the one that made that movie. And I was watching watching it in the middle of the night, and it was just like, the hand of God came down and just grabbed my heart and put me to my knees. And I just totally surrendered to him. And I said, God, I'm in, I understand. I hear your calling. It was the first time I heard
Mm,
what my calling was. And I said, God, I'm going to give you the glory, just like in the game, in the
mm.
movie. After each game, I'm going to give you the glory, win or lose on the battlefield, right there for being part of it. And that was my covenant, my commitment to God. And that's what
Mm.
started the whole thing back in, so that would have been in 2008 when it first
Wow.
started.
Wow. That's interesting. You mentioned you're a Marine. Now, you and I both know, Joe, that there are no atheists in foxholes, Did did God ever come into your mind during those Marine days? I think you were about 14 years in the Marines, were you, or more longer?
Yeah, so I retired. So 20 years in the service altogether. I did 18 years in the Marine Corps. And yeah, when the bombs are going off and people are shooting at you, of course you make those promises, but it's the same thing. Those promises when you drink a little bit too much and you have that hangover the next day, and it's, God, I'll never drink again if you
Yeah.
get me through this. So a lot of those were empty promises, and
Yeah.
yeah, but he's always had his hand on me and he had his eye on me this whole entire time. And I was one of those hard-headed people that didn't realize it until, when my wife got me going to church and really, really straightened me out. And when
Yeah.
that happened.
Amen. All right, let's get back to the high school, Bremerton. I'm not. I always have difficulty working out the American education system, but there you are at the high school. It's who gets to hire the teachers? Is it the principal, or is it the school council, or whatever? How does it work, Joe? Just quickly.
Yeah, so we have a district office that runs all the different schools at all different levels for
Right.
the from little bitty kids all the way up to when they graduate off to college, and the different schools. So they have a district office that does all the hiring and firing and whatnot, and with the input of the principal, the superintendent, and other teachers and admin people. So it's a mixture of everybody in there. Mostly our human resource handle all of those things.
Yeah, because the reason I asked for it is because you and I both know that education is going what we call woke. Uh,
Oh yeah.
you can't mention gay or homosexual. You can't mention same-sex marriage. You can't mention any transgender or anything because somebody will complain. The fact is that freedom of speech should allow you to talk about what's in your heart or what's in your faith. So, would you describe Bremerton High? Would it be a conservative, left-wing, Christian, non-Christian? How would the school? What's the general ethos of the school?
I would say it's very liberal. Very.
Right.
Yeah, I would say it's very woke
Yeah.
in today's society, especially being on the west coast of the United States.
So,
It's notoriously famous for being very, very liberal and
mm.
very. That's where all the hippies moved to, and so it's got the very woke mentality and very liberal.
Yeah, because we have the same problem here in Australia at the moment. We've got this religious discrimination bill at our parliament going through, and the Christian schools here in Australia are arguing and advocating for the fact that they want to be able to employ Christians in Christian schools, and they ought to be able to choose and pick. So, we're fighting strongly for that. But in your case, I guess there are other Christians at that school, or were you the only one? Or what's the general teaching profession? What are their backgrounds generally?
I would say there's a big mixture, and I think there's a lot of people of faith, especially at the higher levels. But they keep it very much a secret. It's really sad to see the way that society is here. That we had a lot of believers that go to church. I went to church with a lot of them, and these people are my friends, but they were so terrified of bringing that out. Like they're ashamed of their faith. They'll be more than happy to paint a rainbow, but they'll be afraid to wear a cross or share their faith. And that's what's scary about society today. And that makes my stomach turn, because being in the military, I fought for our Constitution and to support the freedoms of America. And now all of a sudden people are afraid to show who they are. And that doesn't sit well with me at all, especially with the whole woke agenda, which is, they talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't know if that's a big deal over there in Australia, but it's so huge over there or over here. And I tell them, well, hey, that's part of Christianity too. We're diverse, and the equity and the inclusion of all people of all faith, that includes Christians. So they can't discriminate against us in following our faith. So that's my big stand in it, and I will support and defend that for anybody here in America. And man, I'll come over there and I'll help you guys if I can too.
Well, I'm going to have you over here, Joe, eventually. I know that. But it's funny you mentioned that all these people that are so pro diversity, equity, inclusion, they're all happy to be pro as long as they're not Christian, and that's the issue, and I think it's a contradiction in their own philosophy, but that's another story. Joe, take me to the day that football match was on, and did you win, by the way, that particular match?
Oh, on my first game back?
Yeah. But the day you took that,
Yeah. So when they had to reinstate me when I got my job back, yes, we did. And that was such a blessing. I was so nervous about everybody was there to watch me and see the praying coach return. But God was so awesome and so faithful that everybody forgot about me. And the game was so perfect that everybody forgot about me and just focused on the game. So it was awesome. And yeah, we won, and we went all the way to state this year. We ended up losing in the playoff, but yeah, what a great season the team had. They're incredible young men and coaches.
Absolutely. And so then take me back 8 years, the day or night you took the knee. What was going through your head? You knew you were going to take the knee, obviously, or was it a spur of the moment thing? And then take us to what happened when you got off the field. Did somebody approach you? So just take us through those few moments.
Yeah, that actually was about a month in the development. It originally started where somebody from another school district saw what we were doing and called our principal of this high school and said, "Hey, I just want to tell you what your football program is doing is awesome." So, of course, with any kind of compliment, they have to start an investigation. And the wires got crossed. Everybody got all excited over nothing. We tried to work it out. And they said the lawyers got involved for the school district, and they were afraid of being sued. We have a thing called the Establishment Clause in our Constitution and in our First Amendment, and it states that Congress, and not to bother you with the nitty gritty of it, but they say that we're not supposed to establish a nationwide church. So that's what they thought we were endorsing religion. And I was like, no, this is an individual just saying a prayer. So they said, stop praying with your students, with the team. And I said, well, that's unfortunate because it was such a cool moment for everybody. And this was going on for 8 years. I've been praying with the players for 8 years. So this wasn't something new. Everybody knew we were doing it. Now all of a sudden it's going to be a problem. And so I said, okay, I'll stop praying with them. And I stopped praying with the team. I never prayed with them again. And I continued to pray by myself alone. Well, then they said, well, we can still see you out there doing it. And they said, you have to stop doing that. So they issued me a letter of direction that said I needed to choose between my faith and my job, and I would be put on suspension until I complied with their directive. And I couldn't do that. I said, there is no way on God's green earth that, I had brothers and sisters that have died, and I have served my entire life, fighting for the constitutional rights. Now they're all of a sudden, they're not going to apply to me. And that was a bridge too far. I could not comply with that. So I ended up getting suspended, and it was tough because I ended up losing everything. My whole football team for the next 8 years, I lost everything to make that stand. And not as a spoiler, but I did win eventually. But it took 8 years to do that. and that was no joy. It was a tough decision to make. Nobody should have to be faced with that. Nowhere in the world should people have to choose between their faith and their job. That's just not the way life should be for anybody in the world.
No, amen. I mean, I should tell you, Joe, that here in Australia we have what's called rugby league, rugby union. It's the game that we play here, and rugby union in particular, I'm told it's the game they play in heaven. So you might want to take a note of it, Joe. But you know what? We've got players, Joe, that every time before they start a match or at the end, they get into a huddle and their hand goes up, pointing to heaven, and they pray. And thank God that they're allowed to continue to do that, because they also express their faith on the football field. So take us back. So there you are. You've got this notice. You've been suspended. What made you go to court? I mean, how? I mean, that's not a cheap thing to do, Joe.
No, it's not. When everything was said and done, it ended up costing $6.9 million over the 8 years. And thank God we have great law firms around here that take up these fights. I was with a group called First Liberty Institute, and there's a bunch of different groups here in America that will take on representation for free. So thank God that they do that, and they take these cases on pro bono, because there's no way a high school football coach could pay for legal bills of that magnitude. But imagine if a normal person had to take this on, they would get squashed immediately. So, you know, this was a very much of a fight that needed to be fought. And God's intervention obviously was very much involved with this, and it was worth every single second of the fight.
So did you actually take the school or the school board district to who were the defendant? Like,
yes. Yeah, so it was the Bremerton School District. So
Right.
they cover all the different schools in the district. And unfortunately, these people are my friends. And the number one guy in the school district is even to today, is still a good personal friend of mine. And he went to the same church as I did, which made things really awkward to sit in court and against him, and in having to face him every time for 8 years over this. And he knew what the right thing to do was, but he felt powerless. He wasn't going to jeopardize his career over a high school football coach taking a 30-second prayer. I understand that. But to me, that the principle of that matter was absolutely worth the fight. I can understand that most people wouldn't give up their career for it, but to me, it was absolutely worth it, because some people can't do that. And that's why people like me were made, so we can go to battle like that. I'm one of those guys that God made, not to turn the other cheek, but one of the warriors, like in the Bible, like David and his mighty men. I'm not that lovey touchy Christian. I'm the guy that'll punch you in the neck kind of Christian guy.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I'm unfortunately very touchy. I like to put an arm around a mate and what have you, but that can go the
There
wrong
you
way
go.
these days. I can get me in all sorts of trouble, Joe. So June 2022, which is only last year, you won the case, Supreme Court. I'm hoping that your lawyers got their legal fees, because the loser normally has to pay for them. So I'm hoping they got paid something. But anyway, so Joe, there you are. You've won the case, but it's not until I think March 23 that you actually returned back to the field. So what happened between in that period, Joe?
A lot of things. So I had another job that I was working. So I was trying to just figure out what I was going to do with my life. I had all this time, and I was raising a family. We had kids in the high school. And so I was working full time. I was taking care of my family. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but on my wall, I have all these medals and stuff. I was running marathons every weekend just to pass the time. I went back to school. I got my master's degree. I went back to college and finished graduate school. I did everything I could just to stay busy and try to keep my mind off of not being there with my guys. I went to every football game, but not being there for my players every day, it was tough, especially the first 4 years. then about 3 years ago, we in between going to court over the past 8 years, we moved down to Pensacola, Florida, to take care of my father-in-law. So he had a rough spell, and we moved down to take care of him. He doesn't have anybody else, so we're down here with him for the rest of his days.
Yeah. Joe, so when you returned back to coaching, I think it was just for one day or one match, in point of fact, Joe, what's the reception? You said on the TV it made you feel uncomfortable. Just tell us a little bit about that. I mean, were they persecuting you, or what's the mood? Tell me.
Yeah, so it was such a big deal that you're not going to win that kind of situation. I was going to walk into a hornet's nest. Like you said, I did get reinstated, and I told everybody that I would be on the first flight back to Washington when they reinstated me, and I did. I was there in March when they reinstated me. I was actually at the district office, and I received the paper. I was standing at the door, and that was quite a moment, because I only asked for two things. I asked to get my job back and to be able to pray. That was the only things I asked for out of all of this mess. And so that was the first thing. And I took that paper, I went right down to the high school, and we have what we call spring camp, where we get to take a look at our upcoming season. All of our guys come out, kind of a tryout, and we get to take a look at our team for the first time. Well, they hit me with what we call red tape, and I wasn't allowed to step onto the football field. They told me I had to go and get all these qualifications and go get all my training done. And I said, fine. And so I tried to get back onto the field for 2 weeks, and it didn't happen. So I flew back down to Florida, and I said, well, give it another shot, give it another go here in the fall. So I flew back in August, this August, and I was there for fall camp. What we have about a month before our season fully starts, and we have fall camp where we get our guys in shape, tryouts, and get them into basically competing shape, where we actually get to practice our plays and whatnot, and get them in shape to compete. So I got to work out with our team for about a month before. And the first game, so it wasn't I just showed up for one game. I was there with them every day for a month, and then for the first game. And then during that time, the coaching staff, they did as best as they could. It was dumb things. They would have meetings they wouldn't tell me about. They didn't give me keys to the building to get in. I had to wait for people to show up. They would go out to breakfast with the team and not invite me or tell me about it. It was just those little dumb things that kept adding up, but I understood. I knew that it was going to be like that. And after the first game, because that was the second thing that I asked for, was to be able to pray. So my wife and I, we prayed about it, and we were like, how long do we stay for this? Do we stay the rest of the season? And we ended up praying about it all on Monday night, and Tuesday we got my dad's test, or my father-in-law's test results back, and his heart wasn't doing good. So it was a blessing in disguise that God was saying, hey, you could come on back here to Florida. So with the both things, it was probably best for everybody. It freed up the school to not have to worry about me anymore, and kind of gave us a sign of relief that there's nothing else holding us down anymore. It was the first time that my wife and myself had made a decision for ourselves in 8 years. So that was, we're finally free of all of that, and we can put all that behind us now and move on with our lives.
Yeah. Joe, when they took you back, there must have been some stipulations what you could and couldn't do. Were you allowed to still pray on the field, or is it just privately on? Where did you pray? Was it public, private? What were the sort of stipulations?
Yeah, well, see, that was the thing that got them in trouble to begin with, because they cannot make those stipulations on anybody. And that was the other thing. They started immediately telling me where I could do it, when I could do it, how long I could do it. And I was like, guys, you need to shut up, because this is what got you in trouble to begin with.
Yeah.
And so I had meetings with their higher ups, and I told them, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You could tell me all the things that you want to tell me, that's great, but I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I don't want to hear anything else. I don't want to start fighting immediately. So I told them what I'm going to do is after the game, I'm going to go out to the middle of the field and I'm going to take my knee which was my original plan, what I originally started back in 2008. And they said, well, are you going to pray with the students? And I said, I have no intention on doing anything except doing this. I'm going to go pray. I'm not going to stop anybody from coming out. I'm not going to invite anybody to come out. If they come out, I'm not going to stop them. I'm not stepping into that arena because I didn't care. It like always, if they wanted to come out, cool. This is America. You can do whatever you want to do. So, that was another thing that really bothered me is I wasn't allowed to talk to the team. I wanted to address the team and tell them, hey guys, this is what I plan on doing. I know the school is against it, but I'm telling you, I'm not going to tell you that you have to come out. I'm telling you, either way, it makes absolutely no difference which way it goes. And nobody would even let me talk to the team. So that's why you saw me standing off by myself is I was doing exactly what I was told to do during that game is to stay away from the kids. And so I did my part for the game. I did what I was supposed to do and I fulfilled my covenant with God and I prayed afterwards. So I think it was a win-win for everybody, and it showed all Americans that, hey, the rights were restored, and I did what I set out to do to begin with.
Well, biblically counted as a blessing if we're persecuted for holding our faith, Joe, but it is difficult when Christians are persecuted. Now, Joe, just want to go back to the court case for a moment. Obviously, they were defending the fact that you got sacked or that you would. What were their argument? What was their argument? Was their argument that they didn't want religion to be preached? What was their main argument for upholding your sacking, so to speak?
So originally, it was this potentially could offend somebody. That's what it came down to. It could eventually lead to that, and that's not a right to terminate somebody. So it was on shaky grounds. Then, we have these hate groups. I don't know if you have them over there.
Yep, sure do.
Yeah, so we had a hate group that actually represented the school district, which I thought was a huge conflict of interest, but they represented the school district, and so they showed me their colors of the not our school district, but the public schools in general, that who they are really represented by is the woke agendas that are out here. And so they just wanted they changed their tune from somebody could be offended to where it was, how did they say it, that they wanted to remove all religion from the public square. That was what they ended up with. And so that was their agenda from that moment on all the way through to the end. And that's not constitutional in any way, shape, or form. So that's what the battle was. It was really good versus evil and trying to remove religion from the public square. And that's what the fight was about.
Because I know in America there's a big division between church and state. It makes it clear, but this is different. If you want to pray in the public arena, well, you should be allowed to do that. So, okay.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, and that's an interesting thing is that you always hear the separation of church and state. Well, people have bastardized that phrase from the very beginning, and that started about 50 years ago. So there's nothing that says the separation of church and state. There was a law, a case back 50 years ago that started that, and so my case overturned that case. So that was just something that was made up from a previous law case that we have now turned over. So there is no separation of church and state. They're supposed to coexist together. There's no separation. It's supposed to coexist. So we just reset all the clocks and set things straight.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, our parliament, opens up in prayer. Our national parliament, and there's a lot of movements to get rid of that as well. But the point is that we've got to be very careful of not we as Christians that we don't open ourselves up to persecution. I know it's not about me, but in my role, Joe, I've got death threats, I've got disparaging phone calls, I've got letters and what have you. And I just say, bring it on, because because for
I think
me,
we're related.
I think we are. Because Joe, I am not going to deny my faith. So, in your case, did you get anything along those phone calls, nasty letters, or whatever in the shopping malls or whatever? Tell us a bit about that.
Oh yeah, all the time from the very beginning. And the school district did too. They got it from both sides. They even got
Ah,
it from
right.
other Christians. So I got it from both sides. I had Christians that say I wasn't even praying the right way. So you're never going to make anybody happy. But
Happy.
yeah, I had those guys. We call them trolls over here, and they sit in their mom's basements, and we call them keyboard commandos. They're
Yeah,
so tough on their computers, and
yeah,
I would just tell him, hey, tough guy, if you got a problem, you say you're going to kill me or whatever, hey, let's meet for lunch. And I
that's
would
right.
propose a place. And I only had one guy take me up on it and met me for lunch. And we had a wonderful conversation. And he was the leader of the Satanist group in Washington State. And we had a wonderful conversation.
Oh,
And he ended up schooling me on the Bible, actually, and ended up being on my side, which was just fascinating to me once he
wow.
heard why I was doing what I was doing. He thought, it's amazing when people actually talk and have a civil conversation, what actually comes out of it. But most people just are so ignorant. It's just sad. It's so sad that how closed-minded people are these days.
So during these 8 years, Joe, obviously you went to church. Were people supportive generally, Joe? I mean, some will, some won't, but generally you felt comfortable in church or not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was comfortable just about everywhere I went, all over the United States. I mean, this made news everywhere. Obviously,
Yeah.
you heard about it in Australia. We heard
Mm.
about it, um, Australia, New Zealand, Britain, England. Uh, Over in Greenland. I mean, it was really
Wow.
everywhere,
Yeah.
all over
Mm.
the world. Everybody heard about this. So there were people praying and supporting this from afar. And that's why this really turned out the way that it did for something so minor. I mean, to me, this was not newsworthy. This was not something that should have gone to court. It was a high school football coach taking a knee and thanking God after a football game. That happens every day. You see it all the time, during
Mm.
rugby. This is nothing new. This happens every single day. And the reason why it happened the way that it did is because people around the world, not just in America, but people around the world started turning to God and asking for this, that we start turning our eyes to God. This is what happens, and God will start to listen. And nobody could fight against the power of God, but we just need to turn to Him. And so I credit this to you guys in Australia and people all around America that turned to God and made this happen. So thank you guys for what you guys have
Mm.
done.
Yeah, I mean, our organisation is very, pro freedom of speech, freedom of religion. But I mean, it can be a two-edged sword sometimes, because one of the things argued here in Australia was, if you want religious freedom, you Christians, then can we Satanists also have freedom of speech? So it can be a sort of a two-edged sword. So so we're trying to fight that argument as well. Joe, tell me, okay, the court case is in progress. You're getting there. You have won, and I mean that, in the sense you've won legally. Of course, there are a lot of things that have caused you angst and issues, and nobody comes out of these long court cases, happy as beaver, so to speak. Joe, tell me, what does religious freedom mean for you? What does this win mean for you, and the USA in particular? I mean, mind you, it goes all around the world, but in particular for you and the current state of religion in the USA. What does it mean, Joe? Tell us about that.
Well, it means a lot to me in a couple different ways. For one, it gives me faith in our justice system, and it lets me know that God is very much alive and well. And because you hear about all the horrible things that are happening in the
Mm,
world.
mm,
We have crime just horribly bad across America. And you sit there and think, God, why, are you asleep on the job? What's going on? As my
mm.
friend says, if there's a God, I think he's sleeping on the job. And I'm like, well, why don't you end up talking to him? reach out to him and ask him why he's sleeping on the job, and you're going to get a response. And so this very much tells me that we can change the nation and we can change the world, but it takes action on our part. And that if we do take action, look what happened because one guy took a knee. This is just I'm that's why we named the book Average Joe, because I'm a high school football coach. There's nothing more remarkable. There's nothing remarkable about that. That I'm that everyday guy. So if I can change a nation, imagine what we could do if we all stood up together, if we all prayed, if we all got involved in our churches, if we got involved in our families, in our schools. Imagine what could happen. We could change the entire world. And it's not too late. Most people are like, oh, we'll just wait till Jesus comes back and we'll make no, God put us on this earth for a reason. We need to be better stewards of this. We're supposed to have dominion over this earth. Let's be better stewards and take care of it while we're here.
Yeah.
Gosh. So it's reinvigorated me. There was many times that I felt just bashed down and I wanted to quit. There were so many times I wanted to quit, and I questioned God, why me? Why me? I don't want to do this. You got the wrong guy. There's way more qualified people. I'm not a great Christian. I fail every day. And, there's probably a lot better, qualified people that know the Bible better, better Christians than me, and that are probably could represent you a lot better. But God's got a sense of humor, and, he made the right person. And, so I'm very hopeful and inspired by that. If we could all do a whole lot better, and if I could just inspire one person to get on their knees and to get involved in like your parliament. If you don't know what's happening in your country, man, get involved, because you can't leave it up to other people, because that's how it's gotten to where it is, because we let it happen.
Yeah. Joe, interestingly, you've won. You can pray, so to speak. Did you get any phone calls or letters from other coaches or other sporting bodies saying, hey, well done, brother? Did you anything like that at all?
Yeah. Especially during the case, a huge outreach of professional players, coaches. We have these letters. They're called Friends of the Court, amicus briefs, a legal mumbo jumbo. But a lot of people sign on to those that say that, encouraging me to continue on, and write to the court saying that how they're on my side and what I did was right, and they stood on the side of God. So there was thousands and thousands of people, and not just sports, but in Congress and around the world of just really influential people. And it was just amazing to see the outreach of across the entire world, not just in America, but across the world, to do this. And I mean, every time I felt down and my wife and I felt like, why are we still doing this? Somebody would pop up, we'd get a letter from somebody, or we'd be at a church service somewhere we were invited to speak, and somebody would say, man, I'm from this place or that place. And man, it just totally inspired us and just kept us going. So yeah, we heard from so many people, and that's what we need. We need to hear the winning stories, not just the losing ones, because we are on the winning side.
Yeah, wow. I don't know what's the situation in America is like, but here I'm actually I'm an accredited sports chaplain, Joe.
Awesome.
For A-League sports, and our role is to be there whenever the players want to reach out. You nothing more. But a lot of the football clubs here in Australia do have club chaplains, and they are there to be a helping hand as and when needed. And do you have chaplaincies at all for sporting clubs in the US, Joe?
Oh, yes, we do. Yeah, just about every professional team, every college team. We're trying to do it more on the the school side, but that's where we're having a major breakdown. Is that we get a lot of pushback at that level. But in the college and professional, yes, absolutely. Just like you, we have a lot of chaplains that are involved in that, and that's where we figured things out that God does play an important role in people's faith out there on the field. So yes, we're very much about that. So thank you for doing what you're doing. We need more guys like you out there, buddy.
Yeah, I wish I had more time, but I've got so many other issues to fight over as well. But Joe, look, it sounds like, and I've got to tell you, it brings tears into my eyes when I read certain parts of your book. But Joe, if you had your time over again, 2008, would you do it again, my friend?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As much as I wouldn't want to go through it again, I would absolutely go through it again, because when God calls you, what are you going to do? Turn your back on him? I mean,
Yeah.
I know there's a story in the Bible about who was it, Peter, that turned his back on Jesus 3 times. I always thought, man, that's cold. Why would you do that? I mean, if God calls you, why would you not go? Here I am. And I would absolutely do this again and again, over and over again. As much as the pain and suffering, it's so worth it. And God has always got your back. And you never see the other side of it until you get through it. And you always feel like you're down. But man, I tell you, God will never let you down. He will get you through anything and everything. You just got to put your faith into him. And he'll make you so much stronger when you get through to the other side. And my wife and I are so much stronger and better for it.
Yeah, amen. Joe, in Australia, we've got a similar situation, a bit different, but we have a court case that I think it's just about finished, but it's been going on for years. This particular chap criticised a homosexual for the fact that they were not part of his faith, So he got taken to court for criticising the homosexual community. Long story short, he had to sell his home, borrow money, with all his children still trying to keep them fed. In a sense, he's won, he like you, but it's not an easy task. And but did you feel that you're going to just chuck it all in during those 8 years at all, Joe?
Oh yeah, many, many times. And it was to the point where I lost in court 7 times on the way to the Supreme Court. And each time I felt dejected and thought, why am I still doing this? And I thought I was going to lose. And when I thought I was going to lose, I thought I was going to lose for everybody. And the way that they were ruling is that I was going to take away prayer from the public square altogether. And I thought, man, I just ruined it for everybody. And yeah, I thought, why? What is the point of this? I questioned everything. I even questioned God. Like, really, am I doing? Is this my pride? Is this? I questioned every single aspect of everything, and it just came down to one thing. It was the right thing to do. And even if it's not popular, that's what I've always told my football players. You do what's right. And it's such a simple concept. You do what's right every single time. So,
yeah. Yeah, like the book of Job. I don't know if you're familiar with the book of Job, but no man has suffered more than Job. Job has in the Bible. And of course, he just kept the faith, Joe. And I think that's the important story. Joe, tell me, there must be other Christians in sporting fields, whether it's football or hockey or whatever. What advice would you give them if they're going through something similar that you've been through?
Oh, yeah, that's simple, because being a Christian is not a spectator sport. This is something you got to get off your butt and be active in, and you got to be involved in the game. And you just got to be active. It's simple. It is a very simple concept, is that you just be faithful. You said it. You could say it a million different ways in different terms, but you just do what's right. You just do as God tells you to do. And he's going to get you through it. So, I mean, we got to remove ourselves out of it and put God first, and things will work out so much better if we just get out of the way of ourselves.
Amen. Now, Joe, the New York Jets are going to give you a call, or Seattle Seahawks. Would you go back to coaching at all, Joe?
That's a great question. That's probably $1 million question right now. I don't know what my calling is, and that's what I've been asking for is for everybody to pray for me to find out what's next.
Mm,
Am I called to stay in coaching? Is God just giving me like a halftime and a little break right now and calling me back to that? Is he calling me to ministry? I don't know what is next. I have no idea. So
mm,
I'm very much just waiting to hear what God's calling me to do and just being available when he does call, whatever it is. If
mm,
it's just to you know, anything. I don't even care what it is. If it's working at a grocery store, I'm going to do that.
mm,
I'm going to go
mm,
wherever God tells me to go and and
mm.
and just be grateful for it, whatever it is.
Well, in my opinion, the ministry you're doing now, Joe, is probably where you ought to be, but far be it from me to tell you, because I think the story needs to be told. Christians need to be encouraged, and we don't want to deny our faith. But that brings me to your book now, Joe. Let's have a quick couple of minutes on that. Now, writing something like that, I'm sure you may have had some support or whatever, but that's a fascinating book, Average Joe. It goes through the whole process. How did you feel when you were writing it, Joe? I mean, what was the key motivation for writing that?
Well, it definitely was not just a court case because
Hmm.
court cases to me are very boring.
Or-
My lawyers thought it was the greatest thing in the world going to the Supreme Court and winning this case, and I thought that,
Yeah,
man, these guys are nerds because
yeah,
this is boring. My life was way more interesting than the 8 years of fighting with the legal stuff, and I
yeah,
just wanted to, share my story with them. It goes all the way back to, I mean, you could take a look that I was unwanted pregnancy, and I could have very much easily been aborted. So you could take up the case of like pro-life and
yeah.
against abortion with the case with me. I could have very easily been aborted instead of put up for adoption. So if that would have happened, none of this would have happened. You could look all the way down. I was a troubled youth. I made it through grade school and all my school by the skin of my teeth, and I was in trouble and with the law and everywhere. Everywhere I turned, I was just that horrible person, and I had nothing going for me. So God could take the least likely person and the worst of the worst and turn it around for something as a time such as this.
Mm,
So if he could do it with me, imagine what he could do with guys like you and anybody else that's listening to this. So there is hope for anybody and everyone, and it's a pretty entertaining story. And so I want people to get a good laugh and
mm.
a cry and get outraged. I want them to feel all the emotions that I felt over the past 50 years and go, man, yeah, this guy's been through the ringer and look how he's come out. So
Yeah.
it's hopefully going to be inspiring to some people.
Well, I'm hoping that all things, God willing, will get you out to Australia here and maybe on a speaking tour or something, and then we'll show you how real football is played, Joe. But
Love it.
yeah,
I love it.
and
I do. I'll tell you the truth.
yeah.
I actually watch some rugby sometimes, but don't tell
Oh,
anybody over here that I do
no,
that.
exactly. Well, we're too tough for you guys, I think. Well, you may be aware that our National Rugby League is going to Las Vegas this year.
Oh, really?
Oh, sorry, next year. It's going to open up in Las Vegas. They're going to try and introduce rugby league to the United States of America, and they'll be playing a couple of matches in Las Vegas. So you might want to follow that through and see how that is received by the American public. So yeah, they're going over there
Oh, I
in
love it.
February, I think, or whatever it might be. So Joe, look, you've had an interesting and challenging sort of story to tell us. Just out of interest, what would you like people to take away from your book after having read it? Because there's a lot in it, but what would you personally like to see them take away?
Ah, man, that
Mm,
really God can use anybody.
yeah.
Really, he really could use anybody, and he does. He doesn't use the people that you think he would use. He uses
Mm,
people like you and me, and that
mm,
is just a cool thing. You look in the Bible, he doesn't usually use the kings and the most popular people. He uses the every average person, and he makes some incredible things out of it. So
Mm.
that's the cool thing, is that he could take a terrible mess and make something wonderful about it. And
Mm.
he's pretty
Yeah.
cool about doing things like that.
Yeah. Joe, look, you've been a fascinating person to talk to. I know that, you know, sometimes when you do these sort of things, you're always going to have winners and losers, and life can be very challenging. But I have to tell you, from a Christian perspective, I think it's wonderful to see people like you advocating in the public square. You've held your faith. You know, you've run the race before you, and I think that you're a blessed man just for that. But can I also say that here in Australia, I think, you know, we need more people like you to stand up, be counted, and of course declare their faith in the public arena. Joe, I'm just going to quickly end in a word of prayer, and then we'll say good night to all our listeners. Is that okay?
Absolutely, my friend.
All right. Okay, let's have a word of prayer. Lord God, Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to listen to the story that Joe had to tell us all. He's not here by chance or coincidence. Joe's here to tell us all that we are children of God, and what we need to be doing, Lord, is to proclaiming the fact that we are Christians, not to shy away, not to deny our faith. Heavenly Father, we also pray that you will put your hand on Joe and help him to find his continued calling, whether it's in the public arena or back on the football field. Lord, just use him for your glory. And we ask this in the name of your dear son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Joe, thank
Amen.
you very much. You're a good man. I'll be in touch. And for all the listeners, this is being recorded. It will go on our YouTube page, and I'll let you know when it's available. Joe, on behalf of Christian Voice Australia, may God bless you, and let's continue the conversation. And I'm hoping to get over there one day to watch how this football is played over there. But I will be in touch. God bless you, and
Awesome.
good night, good morning from us, and good afternoon for you.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
All the best. Bye-bye, my friend. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.